No, but have you ever seen a horse like that in your life?
Pretty awesome.
And we are live.
Oh, yeah. I've never seen anything like that. I was thinking of all stands. Well, it's worth $2.
Oh, yeah. $5.
It's $50 or so.
Yeah. Nice payday. Right back to it out.
Yes.
It is.
320.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I've never had that. It's a good race. And people were having fun with this. Yeah. Not a bad day, all in all.
Hey, John. Did we ever get a written transcript of Luke's deposition?
I never did.
Which deposition?
Luke, may not even be out here.
No, we don't have it yet.
Okay. I just wanted to look at it. Just
Okay.
because
I have Scott Reed's deposition transcript in my office if you want that.
no, it's pretty thick though. I would imagine they would question him a lot,
2 days.
yeah, more than they would us.
Oh, yeah. Luke's was a couple hours.
2.5 hours with citizens. So
2 hours.
Okay. Well,
You don't need to risk
it.
2
I made
days.
an error on that. No, I just get a flavor for the choice.
yeah.
So, but I can hold off until I see one of them, can I?
Yeah, well, yours hasn't been scheduled.
No. For me? Chief's lost weight.
Yeah, that's
Millions. Percent. And I'm the best.
Is it a 2-bottle meeting?
Yes, it's not just that. It's
I see a problem.
So we did that. Yeah,
That's a lot of meat.
Yeah, but
empty. That was,
here's some.
I'm not, I'll be here. See you in the morning for
business.
I thought, so.
States here. It's riveted in, riveted.
I thought, so. Yeah, anyway,
Yes.
and, I don't know if it makes
Is it
references, but I wanted to show.
Yeah, I saw that.
That was.
So that's all?
Grounds.
That's not the rate we'll be going with, but I just
Oh,
want to
okay,
make sure you get the correct information.
okay.
Thank you.
But the actual reason we're doing it is that amount?
Well,
Sure.
it's not the amount that we're going, it's the rate matches closest to
The train was on
the compensated rate. It basically comes out
the
to essentially, you know, what, 12,000.
Used to be the reference.
You adopt the.
Okay.
No, no, what I meant was, if we hadn't done
I'll send it.
how much money
It's downtown.
would be generated
Well,
from
it's not
that?
bad. So, I'm calling it Clifton.
At the current rate,
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I didn't even do that. Can't do it.
I know, it's like,
It is 7 o'clock and this meeting will come to order. This is the monthly regular meeting of the Prospect City Council, Prospect, Kentucky. Let's see, we have a full quorum of 6 council members, 5 in person and 1 by WebEx. And today is May the 16th. And before we turn to the agenda, I would like to invite Tricia Morris, who is a candidate for Circuit Judge of Jefferson County, and I understand a resident of Honey Creek, to step up to the microphone and say a few words.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you guys for letting me take a minute of your time. I don't want to take up too much of the council's agenda. I love to see the turnout though, especially after COVID. I did attend the last meeting, and what I'm hearing about this area is wonderful. I love being a part of it. I have been here and a resident for 15 years. I actually live in Fox Cove Court. So just a little bit of background and why I feel like you guys should vote for me tomorrow. Nothing like the last minute. I know I wore my campaign. I'm out walking the streets actually. So it's very important that I got to talk to you guys tonight though. I grew up in Louisville. I went to law school here at U of L. I went to undergrad at U of L. I love this city. I love this community. And I think there's some changes that need to be made. I think on the bench is one way we can do that. As far as my background, I have 20 years in litigation experience. I've practiced all different aspects of the law. The last meeting, you all were talking about a deposition and how long it took. I've been on both sides of that. I have taken 2-day depositions and I have defended 2-day depositions. So my uniqueness and what I bring to the court is the fact that I know civil litigation very well. I've practiced most of my career in litigation on the civil side. However, I've also done criminal defense work, so I know both aspects. But I think all of you would agree that hopefully if you ever came before me, it would be on a civil matter, and you hope that the judge that you're in front of knows the law and how to apply it. And I can guarantee you, I know that. My father was also a circuit court judge for 18 years on the bench. He passed away 2 years ago. But I thought this was a great way to extend his legacy, and it's time in terms of what I have as my experience and relevance that I can ask for your vote now. My mom was a Jefferson County school teacher. She's retired. But again, I love this community. I love this city. I love Prospect. We need some changes. There has been a lot of just people being groomed from the prosecutor's office to come into the judgeships. They don't know a lot about what you and I deal with on a day-to-day basis. They don't know the background. They don't know all aspects of the law. And I'm referring to not just being a prosecutor, right, in terms of the criminal aspect, but they don't know anything about contract law. They don't know anything about the property law, the issues that we are dealing with daily right now in this community. I do. I have practiced those cases. I have litigated those cases. I tried 2 cases last year. That's where I'm comfortable. That's where I want to be. The courtroom is kind of a second home to me. So I don't want to take up any more time. I just ask for your vote tomorrow on the 17th. Again, I'm in Division 10 of Circuit Court here in Louisville, Jefferson County. Again, though I'm a resident of Prospect, so I think we can all agree that we all have a common denominator, and that will serve you all well. So thank you for your time, and I hope I get your support tomorrow.
Tricia, it sounds to me like you're Jeff Morris's daughter.
I am Jeff Morris's daughter. It might have been the red hair, gave it away a little bit. But I'll leave some cards and information out there. So if you want to look up, I think Sandra had actually said that she had looked me up and made sure, because I want you to do the research. You should do the research on who's going to be behind the bench and who your vote goes for. So not only am I asking you for that, but just research me, make sure you're confident in me. But I guarantee I'm not going to disappoint you, and I'm going to be held accountable. So, certainly, yes.
What areas of civil litigation, what specific areas did you litigate?
Okay, I have litigated family law, probate, wills, estates, administrative, civil defense, insurance defense, personal injury, business contracts. Let's see. I had my own practice for a while. And if anybody knows anything about practicing or having a business, so I've had business law as well. When you put your shingle out, workers' compensation, you take whatever comes in, right? You got to put the lights on. So that was kind of you trial by fire for me. And whatever came in, I learned it, I understood it, I researched it, I practiced it. And if I didn't know the answer, I wasn't afraid to go ask for help, which I think judges should be okay to do. and then also be held accountable when you don't know the answer, right? So I'm okay. If I don't know the answer, I'm not gonna make a ruling where somebody's livelihood depends on it if I don't know. And I'm certainly not going to not take the time and consideration that motions need before me. But on top of that, one final thing I want to say about civil litigation and law in Louisville and what needs to change is that I do plan on moving things forward and make it expeditious, because civil law gets dragged along and the judges don't really know what they're doing and they're not sure. I do, and I'm not afraid to make rulings from the bench. And civil litigation and the attorneys and the clients get kind of left behind. And I guarantee that's not going to happen when I'm on the bench. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Judge Baker.
Christian Tish Morris. But I will leave some stuff out there if it's okay with the council, just some cards. So if people have any questions, they go to my website. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time tonight.
All right,
With the
thank you.
council members, do you guys mind checking to make sure that your all's microphones are on? I couldn't hear whoever answered or asked a question. I heard her answer. I just couldn't hear the question. So potentially somebody's microphone's off, maybe.
You tell what Sarah was saying.
Sarah, we couldn't hear you, Sarah.
Can you hear me now?
Sarah, we couldn't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely.
Okay, if I talk louder, does that?
It helps.
I'm not sure who asked the question a second ago to the candidate who was speaking. I just couldn't hear them ask the question, so I was just asking for you all to check your microphones to see if they were on. Just the irony of me not being
The person who
heard.
asked the question was not at the microphone, but as a
Okay.
point of order, I think we're glad everybody's here, but there'll be time for citizen comments at the end of the meeting, I believe.
And can you guys? I saw Ron mess with the volume. Can you all hear me? Okay, or should I keep my volume louder?
That's better.
Okay.
Let's
Okay.
move on
Thank
with
you.
our agenda. The first item on the agenda is the approval, seeking the approval of the minutes of the city council meeting on April 18th, this past month. Are there any additions or corrections anyone has to suggest to those draft minutes? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is the mayor's report, update on city matters. It is very apparent that this city council is not going to act on the proposed budget, which I submitted at the last meeting. 3 council members, Frank Fulcher, Sandra Leonard, and Greg Hulsman, walked out of last month's meeting to prevent a first reading of the proposed budget ordinance. That has never happened before. Therefore, that budget ordinance does not appear on the agenda for tonight's meeting. And I do not expect this council to enact a new budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins on July the 1st. If, as I expect, the council has not enacted a new budget for the coming fiscal year by July 1st, the city will operate under the budget ordinance, which currently is in effect for the current fiscal year, as if it had just been enacted, until such time as a new budget may be enacted. This is doable. One way or the other, there will be a budget. There is one item on tonight's agenda which is critical. It is the proposed ordinance levying the property tax. Typically, the property tax accounts for more than half of the city's revenues. Without that ordinance, the city would not have sufficient revenues to operate under any budget. The property tax rate, which I am proposing, is less than in previous years. The reason is that our homes have just been reappraised by the PBA at a new and in many cases, much higher valuations. By lowering the tax rate, we will keep the Prospect real estate taxes from a significant increase. I hope this proposed property tax ordinance will, after discussion, receive a first reading tonight. I note that as of today, At least 8 residents have filed to run for city council in the November election. I have nothing new to report regarding either of LDG's proposed projects, and the rest will be covered in the various committee reports. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on with the rest of the agenda. Commission and board reports. First is Forestation Board. Is Linda Knox going to give that? Thank you, Linda.
Sorry, Lee's not here. He's enjoying some quality family time. You all should have received the May report in your packet. The key items that we reported were the spring public plantings have been completed, and we also planted, that was 8 trees, primarily on, oh gosh, forgetting my roads, but we also planted 6 trees for our new canopy program. So we're very pleased about that, and we'll continue it in the fall. We discussed some of the problem trees, and those are all a work in progress, but we continue to kind of be vigilant in terms of maintaining a safe tree environment for everyone. You should have a copy of the 22-23 tree plan in your packet for tonight, and if there's any questions on that, I would be available when you get to that point in the discussion. So anything else for tonight?
I just have one question in terms of, I think you all do a fantastic job. In terms of the tree plan, what do you as a board do with that going forward?
We look at okay, some of them are just core values that we hope to use on an ongoing basis that, benefit the community. We also try to identify trends and projects that we can take that would be of a more immediate value to the community. And so if you look at that last page of the plan, it does a recap of some of the things we accomplished, and it sets out some of our goals for the coming period. So we can say how many trees we planted, what sorts of activities did occur, and, things that we want to do that are new. We have a lot of ideas that actually didn't make the goals this year, but are things that we could continue to look at in the future. So, and, we get input from different neighbors, each other, just, keeping an eye on, we get articles on trees and everything from the New York Times to Trees Inc. here in Louisville. There's a lot of sources for information. So we try and use as much as we can that's practical for us to be able to execute successfully.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank
Guess
you.
not. Thank you, Linda. Linda Wardell, Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
Thank you. I did submit a written report, and I would just like to point out some highlights of that written report for the people that are attending the meeting tonight. We did have our second wildflower walk on April 24th, led by Jacqueline McGrail. Again, it was very well received. We had approximately 10 participants, including a couple of young boys who really got excited about finding interesting things in the park. We, at our April, Parks meeting, we did have a request to explore the possibility of having bird walks again. And I've been in touch with the president of the Beckham Bird Club. Their schedule was filled for the peak migration time this spring, but they said they would be very receptive to hosting bird walks in our Prospect Parks in the fall. So I will keep in touch with the president of the Bird Club and try to schedule at least one walk during that time. I mentioned that we were going to continue using volunteers to help remove invasive plant species that we're able to address without professional help. And in the past few weeks, we've had 5 parks volunteers that have helped remove poison hemlock and garlic mustard in Harrods Creek Park. And I've also been in touch with several regular park users who know what they're doing And they inform me that when they hike the trails, they have been pulling garlic mustard as they see it. Anyone that has visited our parks over a number of years can attest to the fact that as we continue to remove these invasive plants, we have more and more native wildflowers and other plants in our parks, which is just great. We're really improving the environment there. We've accepted a proposal for a plan to stabilize a portion of the green trail, which has become eroded. And I spoke with that's with OHM Advisors, and I spoke to the lead person on that effort. And this week I hope to join him and one contractor to walk to the area and get their thoughts about the best way to approach that. We don't expect that fix to hit the threshold of needing to put it out for a formal bid process. So we're going to try to get cost estimates from 2 or 3 people and make a decision. I also talked about the plan to try to put a boardwalk along Putney Pond to connect the landings with City Hall and beyond in an accessible manner. And as I mentioned in my written report, we're writing to the Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund Board, that's kind of a mouthful, for approval in concept. And we need their approval because the property is under a conservation easement, and we need their approval to make any changes. We have submitted that letter, and their meeting is not until the end of July. So it's going to be a few months before we know if they will approve in concept. And if they do, then we will be looking at what additional planning and design work needs to be done to hopefully make that a reality. And the final thing is we will be scheduling some volunteer work days to do just some routine trail maintenance that we can do with volunteers. And that will be ongoing. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Linda,
Yeah.
is there any way to buy out of that conservation easement?
I
So that
don't
we had
believe there
stuff.
is.
They put up money, 200,000
Correct.
or whatever, correct?
Right.
If we would reimburse them for that, would we get control, could we get control over that property?
I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to look at that, but I'd have to have our legal representation look at that contract, but I think it's pretty.
I'll be glad to look
ironclad.
at it. I have no idea.
Yeah, I just, because,
I have a copy of the conservation easement I can send you
Okay.
electronically.
but we have ARPA funds and perhaps if we're struggling to find a way to spend them reasonably, that might be a way that would benefit the city.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's something we can look into, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I don't know who is here to give it, but there's a US 42 safety study update on my agenda.
I could take a stab if you don't mind, John.
I don't mind a bit.
Normally Herb delivers this report, but I see Herb is not here tonight, so I'm not fully prepared. But let me just kind of tell you where we are. It is very exciting. The QK4 engineering group has pretty much finished a study that began last September. Wednesday, don't have the time right in front of me, but most of you, if not all of you, should have received a communication for a public meeting to, at which time QK4 will unveil their plans for US 42. So John and I and several members of the task force were privy to that a couple of days ago, and it's exciting. It's going to be expensive, but there's money that hopefully will be available in the future. This is a federal highway, so it's going to have to be federal money. But anyway, come Wednesday night if you can, and if you can't, it's also a virtual meeting, so you can participate online. and let them know what you think. If you like it, say what you like, and if you don't like it, say what you don't like. We want your input, so that's about it, Jim.
Yeah, just piggybacking a little bit, that is from 4 to 7. But it's a little confusing to me. They're gonna have a session at 5 and another session at 6. So I'm not sure what you do between 4 and 5 and 7 and 8 or whatever it is. But anyway, that's what I understand. It'll be at, is it at,
St. Francis.
St. Francis Field
Yes, sir.
Episcopal Church? Right.
Actually, they usually have all kinds of easels with plans and pictures, and they certainly at the meeting this last week showed us a lot of really interesting pictures. So I would imagine that's part of it.
I want to
And
say,
it's a duplicate meeting, that 5 o'clock. So if people can make it to the early one, great. And it's a duplicate in
Right.
the latter time.
That's correct.
I'd like to say a couple of things. This all began with a study on lighting. And it was Harold Shute, who was on the council at that time, who very appropriately said, shouldn't it be about safety and not just lighting? And that really changed the whole focus of the committee, of the group, working group, I should say. And John was behind it too. And so it really changed our direction and led us to where we got to today. The other thing I want to say is I want to thank Don, because at the meeting the other day, Don came up with a very good idea of how to address the situation on Timber Ridge. And Don, I want to thank you for that. That was a great idea. Appreciate that.
All right, let's move on. Sandra, while you're warmed up, do you want to talk about the library?
Just briefly, we had the book sale. It's still going on. There's not a million things left, but we still have some good things upstairs. And I want to thank all the residents who have donated so much to us over the years. It makes a big difference. We had 14 amazing volunteers, some of whom are here today, and everything went really smoothly. It was lovely. The money is still coming in, and it makes a difference to what we can do in the library. Thank you all.
Good. Chief Gerard is on some Mexican beach, smoking a cigar and doing what he does best, which is art appreciation, John. So we'll have the police report from our Assistant Chief Tony Dunn.
Yes, he's been texting, rubbing it in with his pictures of him. You know, he's actually doing selfies. So he must be having a great time. Daggone. He's doing great. Guys, it was pretty much a quiet month for the most part. Overall, house watches are starting to slow up a little bit. They'll go back up whenever school's out. Everybody's going on vacation. One thing I would ask, and I'm glad there are some people here tonight. If you want us to do a house watch, it's easiest to get online, submit that online, and it's best to do it 48 hours before you go. We're having some issues with a lot of people are trying to call as they're leaving, going out of town, and they're calling us when they're hitting the road. And there's a lot of specific information that we asked for, you know, like if somebody is going to be at your house, what lights are going to be left on? Will there be a car in the driveway? Those are a lot of things that give us info in case anything unusual is going on at your house. So if you ever, and we love doing the house watches are fantastic, but if you can submit that 48 hours ahead of time with all that pertinent information, it makes it a lot easier to do it. So we get a lot of use out of that house watch. The only felony case we had was a scam involving Amazon and PNC. And that's just a common sense thing. Never give any information out that somebody sends you or calls you over the phone. You call that person back and you double check before you ever send a check to anyone, and send it and do it through your bank, especially when they target elderly and a lot of different things like that. And there are scams out the wazoo these days because the internet is available. Be careful. Always, if you have an issue and you think you may be being scammed, you call us. It doesn't bother us. It doesn't take 5 minutes. You call us and you ask before you ever send money or do anything. We're glad to help. We don't want you to become a victim. So if that ever happens, please call us. Theft from vehicle, which knock on wood, has been extremely slow lately, even up in Oldham County over North Commons where we keep eyes on trends. There hasn't been a lot lately. The only one we had last month was over at the clubhouse. And that seems to be a trend about every 3 months. And it's usually with an unlocked car and something left visible open. So lock your cars. Do not leave any valuables out in your car where they're visible. This was a purse in the back seat of the car that was easily visible for somebody walking by the city. So always keep your things. And the trend is, hey, I won't lock my car because they'll just go through it and they won't break the window. Rarely, I've been out here over 5 years and rarely do people break windows. And if they do, they're going to get in there regardless. And that's where we're at. So definitely lock your cars and put everything up. Another big thing at night, our late shift, specifically once it gets dark, checks on this trend for you guys. Garage is open. If you've had your garage open, you may have or may not got a letter or a little notice in your mailbox. It's easy to forget. It's getting warm. You're in and out of your house. You're in and out of your garage. Please make sure you're closing them at a respectable time of night. Don't leave yourself kind of open to be a victim. To give you an example, last year we had, we left a patrol notice, was up on the beginning of Hunting Creek to close the garage. The person called back, said, hey, wanted to talk to us about leaving the notice. Their truck was stolen about 2 weeks later with the keys in it, their garage. So people will come into your garage. Don't leave yourself out to be a victim. So that's one of the things. If you get a notice, it was our late shift officer who checks the houses. So make sure you're keeping our garages shut. Two little trends picking up on lately. Not a concern really with either one of them. We've gotten a few extra runs on homeless folks that have kind of migrated out this way a little bit. I know you'll see up near the expressway up by 264. There are a lot of folks that hold up signs and do different things up there. Sometimes people migrate down this way. We usually immediately get calls. We either take them back because Louisville has a lot of homeless population. So they do migrate out this way from time to time. That's fine. We either take them back down there if they're having mental health issues. We take them to the appropriate authority at that time. So it does kind of alarm people out here and they'll call. That's fine. We'll take care of it. But there's been just a hair of an uptick and it's somewhat actually subsided. The other thing are solicitors. And there's nothing that will get the phone ringing and get people calling us more than a solicitor in this area quickly. The biggest issue that we have is a lot of these businesses, they either come from out of town or they locate here in town temporarily. They get vans, they hire younger college type kids, and they'll drop them off in each neighborhood. So like Greenex was out here for a little bit. You guys probably may have knocked on your door. They'll drop people off in Sutherland's, Timber Ridge, Hunting Creek, Bridgepoint, and we'll get calls from each neighborhood. By the time we get over there to start kind of letting them know, a lot of them just do not know that we have no soliciting in our neighborhoods. Usually we'll talk to a supervisor. I will say that Greenex was fantastic. I was able to meet with their supervisor over here off Timber Ridge. They don't understand, and it is confusing. It's very confusing. The city of Prospect that we have boundary wise from up around the Snyder to the Oldham County line, they don't understand that, Norton Commons is also has a 40059 zip code. They get really mixed up in here. We're able to sit down and list every neighborhood that resides within your area. We've never got it right again. They were very respectful and left out. So know that if you're calling in a solicitor, they don't disappear immediately. It's because they're in different neighborhoods. It's almost like they parachute out of the air out here and they get everywhere. But we really work hard to get rid of that because we know and respect these are your homes. You don't want to be bothered. I totally understand that. We take care of that. But if you ever have an issue with that, also call us. You're never wasting our time. You call us. You call us anytime. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions? All right, hearing none. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Does anyone have any? Not, we'll move on to the next item, which is under new business, and it is the Forestation Board's 2022-2023 City Tree Plan, which is in your packet. It's a 4-page document, and at the end, it asks for approval by the City Council by vote. So would anyone like to make a motion to approve the tree plan?
I move that we approve the tree plan as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, they want to know the number of aye votes and the number of nay votes, so we'll do a roll call. Sandra?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
6 yes and 0 no. Thank you. That's adopted. Next on the agenda is Resolution 4, Series 2022. Frank, I believe that's yours, so I'll turn it over to you.
Do we need to read the whole thing, Chris?
Just for this first reading.
No, this is just a resolution.
Resolution.
Okay.
What's that?
Okay. Yeah, read the whole thing.
Okay. Commonwealth of Kentucky, City of Prospect Resolution 4, Series 2022. Whereas informed decisions based upon reliable, timely information are critical to the fiduciary duty of city council members to the public. And whereas proposed budget information must be available in sufficient detail to both the city council and the general public with sufficient time for review, analysis, input, and discussion. And whereas the annual city budget process must comply with relevant statutes and ordinances. Now therefore, be it ordained by the city council that unless and until the budget message requirements of KRS 98A.030 and Prospect City Ordinance 33.03G are met, no proposed annual budget ordinance will be accepted for reading. Further, according to KRS 91A.030.7, the budget message is required to explain the revenue raising and expense goals are fixed by the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Important features of the activities anticipated in the budget, the reasons for significant changes in program goals and appropriations levels from the previous year, any major changes in financial policy. I move that we accept this resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to say a few things. In support of this, actually, excuse my voice, I've been outside a lot and I've got allergies going on, so this is hot tea, I promise you, it's not anything else. So, the budget was set to 3 of us on the council at the end of business Wednesday before Easter. 3 of the other council members who had worked on the budget were privy to the information that was in the budget. But 3 of us were not. And I really don't apologize for not being able to see it because my family and I are very, very close. We do a lot on Easter week. And so I didn't see it until Sunday afternoon. And so I didn't have time to look at it. And it's a $4.7 million budget. I forget how many pages, 16, 17, I don't know. So there's a lot to absorb. But what also concerned me was, and I was thinking that, oh, wait, the message has not been delivered to not just us, 3 of the council members, but to the citizens. And I felt that the citizens needed to know, maybe not every line item, of course, but certainly a message on what we're trying to achieve in this wonderful city that we get to live in. And what are the things that we want to do with this $4.7 million? Where's this money coming from? There was so many questions to ask. But so Monday at the last 4 weeks ago, at the last council meeting, really what was in my mind was we're breaking the law. Because, and I didn't want to do that. I took an oath to uphold the law. And I really felt strongly, and I still do, that we would have broken the law had we met on that and gone with a first reading. Now, I understand that some will say, well, it's just a first reading. Well, yeah, it is just a first reading, but that sets the stage. And it makes it very, very easy to go ahead and do that second step. And then before you know it, we were already there. So I wanted to say that. But the other concerns, I did look at the budget on Sunday night, last 4 weeks ago. And there were some things in there that I was gravely concerned about. And I don't want to get into a whole lot of it right now, but let me just touch on a couple of things. The US 42 project, which we've been working on really, really hard for a number of years. I didn't see any money in there for the phase 2 of the US 42. And that would be sad to miss that. And the other thing is I saw that we had money in there for repairing some sidewalks. Now, again, I didn't work on the budget, so I don't know the details, but my big fear is I don't want our taxes to blow up. I want them to stay the same. And if we start repairing sidewalks, then I'm afraid personally that would set a precedent. And then each neighborhood would say, well, heck, if we're going to do their sidewalks, we need to do ours. And before long, we're going to be repairing all the sidewalks in the city of Prospect. And I didn't want us to get into that kind of expense. So these are some of the concerns I had. There's a lot of other things like the walkway and that, but basically I just felt that I wanted to do the right thing in the right way. And I didn't feel like we as a city were doing the right thing. We didn't tell the citizens what we wanted to do, and we didn't do it the right way because it wasn't timely. So, John, you started off the meeting this morning by saying it's apparent that we don't want to. Well, we do want to. We want to have a budget. And I want all of our needs to be met. And of course, we have to spend this ARPA money. We have plenty of time, but I want to spend this ARPA money and use it effectively. So I'll shut up. But anyway, those are some of the concerns that I had and what I was thinking 4 weeks ago.
I have to respond. The way to deal with Greg's questions that he raised is by having discussion. When you have a motion and a second, you then have discussion. It can go on for 10 minutes or it can go on for 2 hours, but that's how we always proceed. You discuss these issues that Greg raises. That's number one. Number two, with regard to illegality, I delivered the budget message at the last council meeting. It described the main sources of revenue, the property tax and insurance premium tax, as usual, while pointing out that a major change from previous years with the additional significant source of revenue, $635,000 last June, another $635,000 this coming June from the American Rescue Plan Act, which we are required to spend. All of that was in the budget message. Regarding expenditures, I pointed out that significant amounts are proposed for parks, specifically Little Hunting Creek Park and Harrods Creek Park, and consistent with the survey we did, showing large sentiments for greater pedestrian connectivity between neighborhoods. The proposed budget contains significant appropriations for sidewalks and for a boardwalk which would connect the landings in Putney Pond with City Hall and Little Hunting Creek Park. That is not to say, I'm interrupting myself here. That is not to say that the council would want to do any or all of those. They were in my proposed budget and I pointed it out. It's up to the council then to debate, decide, come to a vote, not walk out. Another significant different expenditure which is proposed in my proposed budget is the amount of employee pay increases, which normally are about 1.5%. But this year, due to inflation running 8%, with the state making 8% increases across the board, this proposed budget proposed 7% raises for all employees. Again, that is not dictatorial in any way. That is a proposal for the council to debate and decide. Okay? Those are the main points of the proposed budget and the differences from previous years, and that constituted my budget message, which I delivered at the beginning of the last meeting. Furthermore, I want to just note, Greg, as far as how the proposed budget was put together, you may recall that I invited you to be with us in putting that together, and you declined. Okay,
First time in 4 years because I wanted other people.
The mayor's got the floor.
That was first time.
The mayor has the
Greg,
floor.
Greg,
Because I wanted other people.
Greg. Well, I have one other point I wanted to make, but now I've forgotten what it is, so I'll let other people. Oh, yeah, after the walkout, that occurred, at the last meeting, I sent an email out to Sandra and Frank and Greg, and I said, you know, I tried to make it as nice as I could. I said, you know, if you'd like to come in and talk with us, I'll get the staff together. We'll explain anything you'd like us to talk about. Please let me know by Friday. That was 5 days. You know how many responses I got? 0. No response. The following Tuesday, I got an email from Sandra saying that she was very busy, but she'd send me some questions. That's all I have to say about it.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really troubled by Greg's comments. The allegation of illegality is out of line and incorrect. The mayor met the requirements of the statute. Greg was invited to be on the budget committee. He declined. That's his choice. Sarah was not on the budget committee. 2 of us were. That was Don and myself. Sarah was not on the budget committee. She received the draft budget. She had, I think she said 18 questions that she posed by email that day. Those were answered to her satisfaction. I think Frank had 1 question by email. I asked Sandra if she had questions. She could have raised them before the meeting or during the meeting. She said she didn't know what questions to ask. So, you know, I'm a little put out with the tone this evening, but your comments this evening are fine. They would have been fine during a discussion of the budget. They're not fine after you turned your backs on us and walked out. So that was your decision. That's fine, but I don't have to like it, and I don't.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to that, John, and you too. Good. So to me, a budget message is more than what you spent less than 3 minutes to deliver. And you only touched, actually, you spent more time on it tonight than you did then. You talked about property and insurance taxes.
What I said tonight is exactly what I said
Right.
that night. Exactly.
Yes, now I have the floor now. And then the other topic you brought up was the 2 parks expenditures. The third topic you brought up was connectivity, and the fourth topic you brought up was salaries. And then you said, this concludes my budget message. And you spent less than 3 minutes to say all of that. And we're spending $4.7 million. So I didn't hear anything about roads. I didn't hear anything about safety and about the police department, about infrastructure, and about a million other things. And neither did the citizens of the community. So those are my feelings. I'm sorry if some don't like it, but those are my honest feelings about what has happened. I don't think we did the right thing, and I don't think we did it in the right way.
Sir, if I can make a comment.
Sarah,
It seems there's a philosophical difference between when a discussion can occur. Everyone says they want to have a discussion, and I think that's great. I think when people leave, it's impossible to have a discussion. And then if there's no follow-up, there's no discussion. And I have many other things to say, because thank you, Doug, for mentioning that I got the budget when the other 3 council members got it. And there seems to be an intentional, and I mentioned that at the last meeting, but it seems to be an intentional manipulation of that to claim that there are 3 people who aren't able to participate in this process. But we've gone over the ways that it has. But I did want to come back to the resolution because that's what we're talking about now. I feel like we're getting a little budget chatty, but the resolution appears to me that these things are codified in law. And I think it's been a good discussion. My comments for the resolution that's on the floor is that it parrots not all that are in these regulations, but it does mention the 2 that need to be followed in terms of state law and our ordinances. But if they're codified there, we have to follow them, duty bound, and we can discuss those things, but I'm not sure there's any value, or to me, there's no value added in this resolution at all.
Is that it?
No,
No, I'm
Sarah.
asking Sarah if she's
Oh.
finished.
I'm sorry.
Sarah, you finished?
Yes, thank you, appreciate it.
Well, Sarah's right. There is nothing particularly onerous about repeating the statute, repeating the ordinance that we're bound to follow. There's definitely a difference of opinion about what these words mean, and there probably always will be. But without, if this council doesn't approve this resolution, it says that, okay, we're not really interested in following these laws or ordinances, at least in my mind.
By law, the budget is put together by the executive of the city, which is the mayor. It doesn't say that he needs to involve any council people, doesn't say he needs to involve it. His responsibility is to put the budget together. The council has a responsibility to approve it. They can alter it, approve it. The law assumes that the mayor and the council are going to work together to get a budget out by the end of the fiscal year, and went effective July 1st of the succeeding year. And I don't see in this resolution, the law doesn't say how the mayor should present it or how much time he should take. He presents the budget. And the council goes into discussion and approves it, and the council is free to change it. This resolution just adds no value at all, right?
It also has the disadvantage of leaving out a major portion of the statute. The statute requires that the council adopt a budget, and there's no mention of that requirement in this resolution. So it's a misleading by omission, and I oppose the resolution.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, let me comment that I think maybe this is the wrong vehicle for what you're trying to accomplish. A resolution has no legal effect. A resolution is supposed to be about things, about making it, recognizing it as the national, our city flower week or whatever. Resolutions are really not designed to tell the council how they're to operate in the future. So I don't know why you would put this in a resolution form, is number one. Number two, the statute does not say that you have to have a certain length of a budget address. In my estimation, what the mayor did was in compliance with the statute without any question, because not only did he touch on the relevant changes in the budget, but he also attached, I think it was a 15-page single line legal size item by item explanation of what the budget was. So everybody really did have the information that they needed to make appropriate decisions on it. But again, I don't understand why you would do a resolution on this subject. So
John, can I be addressed again? Now, address again.
You have a lot to say tonight. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, yes, I do. The law, to me, is not perfectly worded. And there are no penalties in that law if it's not obeyed. So I'm thinking right now, so where do we go from here? What can we as a council, we've kind of painfully, but I think importantly, voiced our concerns and our oppositions and all those things tonight, and I think that's good to do. So, but where do we go from here? And so what I think is, forgetting the law for just a second, and just going back to just common sense, I think that a message is good. A message is good for us on the council, and a message is good for the citizens so that they know which direction our city is going, at least some of the big items. What are we doing with the money, and what are we doing, ARPA funds, and what's going on? It's really good information. They could maybe go in a newsletter. But then I think whether we approve this resolution or not tonight, I think it would be good for us to decide. And I think the people want us to decide, okay, where do we go from here? Are we going to dance around? Are we going to try to get this budget approved? So that's one thing. The other thing I want to say is, and I have to really say this, is sometimes there is an action to speed things up. Let's go ahead and vote on this. Let's go ahead and bring this to a decision. And I think that is part of the problem too, is we don't use the tools that we use are words. We don't use hammers or saws or anything like that. We use words to do our work. And I know myself, many times I've changed my opinions by listening to my peers. And maybe they have changed their opinions and listening to me, I don't know. But I do think that, and none of us has ever really filibustered or taken hours to delay things. We don't do that. But I would like to have plenty of time to have a discussion on the many parts of this budget that there are.
So the motion's on the resolution. I suggest we go ahead and vote on that unless there's further discussion.
Actually, it's my turn. In a way, I agree with all of you and I disagree with all of you. I think there are two major components, and all of you in one way or shape or form have dealt with them. One is the way this has been done right now does not give any specific information to all of you. I remember at our last meeting, somebody's got up and acknowledged the fact our normal budget is $3.5 million. This is 4.7. What's going on with that extra money? And I think there are some things that have been stated. The mayor did talk about some of those things, but he talked about them without any dollars being attached to them. So it's fine to talk about Little Hunting Creek Park or Hunting Creek Bridge. What does that mean? Where did those dollars come from? How much are they? I think you've got a right to know. I think we've got a right to know. I think the other component is there was a movement at the last meeting to go ahead with a first reading. And somebody said at that, okay, if we go ahead with a first reading and there are any major changes, we have to do another first reading by law. So why are we crashing ahead with a first reading when we don't even know what the components are in the budget or how much they are? We're talking about a salary increase. In the document that we were given, we were talking about a salary increase, but we just gave a 7% salary increase.
Are we giving another 7%?
No,
I don't know
no,
if there's
no,
a
we did-
typo on that
We
page.
did not do a 7% increase.
Is there, then we need to, that's one of the things, we should have had this dialogue prior to a first reading. Because what happens with a first reading, if you've got the votes lined up, there doesn't even have to be a dialogue. The next time you have a meeting, you can go ahead with a second reading. And I think, just like others have said here, I think you've got a right to know what we're spending our money on. I think you've got a right to know, are we spending ARPA funds one time only, one shot money? Are we spending those in any way, shape, or form on something that has a continuing financial implication? Are we going to have to raise your taxes in 3 years? One of the items on the agenda tonight is lowering taxes. And as the mayor very clearly said, it's because we pretty much have to. The reassessments have caused a more than 4% increase going forward. Okay, that's fine. What are our projections? Are we going to have deficit projections in the future? We don't know that, and you've got a right to know.
You know, the mayor's budget's not on the floor. That was the last meeting. This discussion could have all occurred at the last meeting. It didn't, you walked out. So
Because
let
we were
me finish,
pushing
let me,
for a
fin-
first
let me,
reading.
let me finish.
Sandra has the floor, Doug.
No, I think
I was done.
I think she was finished and I was speaking.
Uh,
So the motion is on the resolution. We've all expressed our opinion on it. The budget's not before the council. That was last month. So I suggest we go ahead and vote on the resolution.
Without objection, that's what we'll do. Sarah, how do you vote?
It's codified in law, no.
Frank, how do you vote?
Yes,
yeah, yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, Greg, since you're eager, how do you vote?
Yes,
Doug?
No.
Don?
No.
Sandra?
Yes.
3-3, motion fails. Next item on the agenda is the first reading of ordinance 617, 2022. It's the municipal road aid budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Anyone care to make a motion for the first reading of that ordinance?
I motion that we make a first reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
Just a question. Are there additional funds in the proposal that was in front of us last year? Or is this the entire paving budget going forward?
Don't understand.
Yeah, say that.
Very often from the general fund, we appropriate funds for paving because the amount of money that we receive from the state isn't adequate to keep your roads in order. And what we're looking at, we're by law, we have to segregate what we get from the state. It can only be applied to roads, but it's not enough. And so very often we allocate an additional amount. Is there an additional amount allocated, or is this our entire budget for next year or for this year?
We'll be operating next year under this year's budget. So to the extent that this year's budget contains funds for paving, it will renew on July 1.
And there was a lot in the current budget for paying. There was $380,000.
That wasn't my question. In the proposed budget that we got last month,
That's not on the
is there
floor.
additional money for paving?
That budget's not on the floor.
That isn't the issue.
The budget that we're operating under is this year's budget. And as things stand now, this year's budget will be next year's budget because the council has failed to act.
But we could move ahead next month, and I need to know.
You
if
can
this
do
is
that. You can propose a budget. That's any member of the council can propose a budget. You're not foreclosed.
What I'm getting is no answer to my question.
Well,
I believe the answer is if you do adopt last year's budget.
Not
Then it-
last year's. the
we don't
proposed
adopt it. It
budget.
automatically goes into
Well,
effect.
assuming the current year fiscal years becomes the next budget.
Okay, that isn't my question. Did we supplement it in any way with what we were hoping to go forward?
Well, you got the budget materials and that would answer the question.
But it really doesn't. And that's my question.
Well, that would have been a good question to ask last month. So it's been moved and seconded. Are we ready to vote on the,
Well, the question, Sandra, your question, are you questioning the $167,000 on the top line?
No, but what I'm questioning, the question is basically, how much money do we have in the next 12 months if we approved this to spend for paving?
and the answer is whatever amount is in the current budget.
No.
The current budget was the 380K catch up. Everybody's got these copies of these budgets. Most people have them with them anyways. Yeah, the city has had to play catch up on paving, and they have done so in spades. So in my opinion, the money that is in, again, this is just my opinion, that in the road aid fund, since this winter was not, well, it depends on what this winter does, is that there's enough to get back on a normal plan to pave the city. Because for years, and there's only so many members who've been on the council for a long time, the city wasn't keeping up. And so the past 2 years, I know that was a huge push for new people on the council, was to get the roads paved. So yes, if no one else has the budget in front of them, I carry all the year's budgets from when I got on the council to include the proposed one that no one wants to talk about. There's 380K that got paved. Street maintenance and repair was another 35K. So yes, if that answers anybody's questions. I have the budget here. I'm happy to look at this current year's budget if I'm the only one that has that.
No, I've got mine here, and what it looked, first of all, I don't want to lose your question because I think that is another question. But it looks like there was $35,000, but then off to the side, it says City Hall parking lot expansion. Does that mean that the $35,000 was only going to go to the parking lot expansion and that there was no general fund money that was going to be allocated for paving? In which case we go back here and we say that this is the entire amount if some budget is passed that resembles what we were proposed. And then if the answer to that is yes, my next question is the one that Frank just brought up. And that is the balance of $167,000 the increments we have been receiving, or did we not spend something last year on paving? My impression was that we spent all of the road aid fund on paving and that there was nothing left over.
It's not true.
Okay.
It's not true. This is how much money is in the road aid budget for paving from the year.
Okay, but
This proposed-
normally,
this proposed budget, and it's not going to see the light of day anyway, doesn't have additional money for paving. Because it got all that money in the road aid budget.
okay, normally what we do, because the road aid funds are restricted to roads, we normally spend that first on paving. Because if we don't need it all, we don't spend general fund money. Because general fund money can be used for a variety of different kinds of things. And that's why if we're carrying over 167,000, in some ways, I don't understand that because that has not been our practice in the past.
So the motion is for first reading of this ordinance. I think, Sandra, that was your motion. I think Frank seconded it. I would suggest we move to a vote unless there's further discussion on the motion to give a first reading to this ordinance.
See, this is what I mean about.
Is there
taking the
further
time.
discussion?
Yeah, this is what I mean about taking the time to make sure that we've gotten everything resolved before we push for a decision.
I'm not trying to push. I'm just saying, we got a motion that Sandra made, Frank seconded it. The floor is open for discussion. And that seems to me we're ready for vote, but if you've got further discussion that's pertinent to the motion, I would encourage you to make those comments.
It feels to me like we're in a bit of a round robin. And Doug, I don't want to speak for you, but it feels to me when, you go, hey, I think we've all had time to say our piece, like it's time to vote. I don't take that in a rude way. I take it as we've reached a point of circular, logic. Everybody has their own opinion. No new questions are being asked. The answers are given, and some people may like them or not. But I think to Greg's point that there's a rush, I think there's just nothing else productive happening. There's no ask for new information. There's no proposal of anything. I think that would be helpful if there is a proposal to bring it forward, and that would give us something new to discuss. I appreciate that there's a value of everyone's time, and it all does need to be in detail, but we just can't walk around the same idea and end up back at our starting point and continue that.
Yeah, I want it to go through. I want to support it. It's just that I don't understand all the numbers. And I don't like to act on something unless I fully understand it. But I don't think I'm going to get that understanding tonight, so.
Well, we can try if you want.
Well, one of the other, going through and looking at this, it ends up, I don't know if any of you've been allowed to see it. It ends up with an ending balance at the end of June next year with $107,000. Oh, I don't know what we've proposed to pave, whether what's being allocated is adequate. Should we have a balance of 107,000?
This is your motion.
Well, because otherwise apparently we don't talk about things, but the bottom line is they've allocated 144,000 to paving and snow removal. That looks like all, and it looks like they've got a balance of 107,000 afterwards. If that's enough, that's fine, but where did that number come from?
Sandra, do you want it to be higher or lower? I apologize, I'm over here.
I want to know
I'm
what
just getting
streets are
last year's.
being, I want to know what streets are being paved and how much they cost paving.
And those discussions would have been part of putting the final budget together. And so we're taking this road, we're taking this information here, and you're wanting to know the information from a budget process that you refuse to get involved in. And that's the next step, and that's the next step here, is to get back for the council and delve in and decide what roads we need to pave and don't need to pave.
Okay, but if that's true, why are we already projecting $107,000 balance at the end of the year? I mean, why are we not approving the entire amount? And then if there's something left over, fine.
Call the question.
Yeah, can I have a question from Sandra's. Since we'd have to vote on the call to question. Do we need to vote real quick on the call to question?
We do procedurally.
Because I have a question after that.
We have to vote on Craig's calling of the question. Is there a second on that? Because that ends debate.
Yes, I know.
Okay, so I need a second to that.
Well, there's no second, so I think Sarah's comments would be in order.
I agree.
I just had this is mainly so I can understand it. I apologize. I'm fiddling over here trying to find the previous road aid. So if 251 is available for appropriation with paving and snow removal, we've always had that estimate. And I don't know if Ron or John Carter want to speak to that, but the 144K. And then 107 is left over. So I guess I'm missing the part that we're discussing. 107 can be allocated to paving or anything else. Many times we see how bad the winter is and then figure out, shoot, does that extra 107K need to go somewhere? Because there can always be general fund money, secondary. But I guess as it's written, I could be wrong, so somebody correct me. Of that 107K, that's that look forward. You can allocate that for paving if you so choose. We have a list of roads in line. That doesn't have to be written into the road aid ordinance. I mean, the city just did, it's probably 400 plus K of paving in the last exactly year to catch up. So I'm not surprised that there's not a road written on here. So I guess I'm not making sense. My question is if there's 107K on here, is the thought that there needs to be street names associated, or
No,
that
it's
there's-
actually the fact, your point's well taken. No, it's the fact that 144,000, we typically, for plowing, now I don't know about the last couple of years, but prior to that, we tend to allocate 60,000 for snow removal. Okay, that leaves us about $84,000 for paving. That isn't a tremendous amount of money. And so I don't know if that makes sense.
And I apologize if does anybody mind if somebody jump in if they have a question. I just had a question on Sandra. So the 80 something K that you just mentioned, Sandra, you're talking about out of the estimated expenditures for paving and snow removal, the 144K. You're talking about normally it's 60K. I could be wrong, so I'm saying what I heard. 60K for snow removal, and I thought there was another normally 60K for the salt is what I thought. Can somebody?
Okay,
John
but
Carter
then are
or
we
Ron-
saying only $24,000 is going to be spent on paving?
No, so that would be 132 would be left over to be allocated. So there's that line that says estimated ending balance 107K. I mean, you get money in the fund every month. I guess I'm missing where the 107K is dropping out, and the 60K for snow removal and paving. I assume that the 144K is a slight padded extra because the previous one of these winters, we were way over budget. It was where it kept snowed for
That's right.
15 times, and you don't know. So we may end up with excess, and you allocate more for paving. But I mean, we may overshoot. But there's still 107K, even with a kind of a high estimate, probably a secure estimate. The city residents, I don't think should or will tolerate if the streets aren't paved or salted. But I just might be reading it wrong, Sandra. I'm trying to get to where you're at, but it does look like there's good money in here to do things.
So my suggestion is this is a first reading. There's an opportunity for questions to be asked beyond this meeting. As Sandra pointed out, if there's substantial changes in this budget, we could have another first reading. But I think the discussion is helpful, but I think it's time to vote on the motion I would suggest that we vote on the motion that's on the floor to approve the road aid budget.
I think Frank agrees with you. Frank, how do you vote? Frank,
Oh, yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Sandra,
Yes.
and Sarah.
Yes.
Unanimous. All right, last item before we have comments from citizens is.
Oh, yeah. First reading.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We just had a motion for a first reading. Doug, would you give it a first reading?
Sandra's motion. I think Sandra would be the one to read the title.
Actually, do we have to read it? I thought we read it at the second.
Title.
Need to read that title.
Probably way to do it, Sandra.
Okay, that's all right. City of Prospect, Kentucky Ordinance 617, Series 2022, an ordinance establishing a budget for the Municipal Road Aid Fund of the City of Prospect for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023.
Thank you very much. And now we turn to the last item on the agenda, other than the comments. which is the ad valorem tax rate ordinance.
I move we have a first reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
I want to say thank you to John for the background information on how this was calculated. It's very helpful to me. Carter, thank you so much.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll come to a vote. Frank Filcher,
Yes.
Frank Gilsman,
Yes.
Doug Farnsley.
Yes.
Don Gibson,
Yes.
Sandra Leonard,
Yes.
Sarah Odell. Sarah, you're going last because you're way over there.
Yes. From way over here, yes.
Unanimous. All right. That ends.
Move to adjourn.
We have comments.
No,
Sorry. Sorry.
As the fellow says, Frank, not so fast.
Oh, yeah.
Say your name and address.
She
Everybody's
didn't-
welcome.
She didn't sign up.
Frank, can you tell if the button's on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank
Can
you.
you hear me?
No.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. No,
How about if I just talk louder?
we could hear you on the microphone. Either way.
I want to express my extreme disappointment with the city of Prospect for their persecution of me and for my front yard guard. It's, to me, the height of both ignorance and arrogance that people who run this city would let a small group of trolls who decided to take up a vendetta against a garden, get the backing of the city to pursue this and to make up some nuisance charge for a garden. It's ignorance because Prospect is being left in the dust behind other cities, counties, and states around this country. There are at least 2 states that I'm aware of that have passed right to garden laws. One is Illinois, and the other is Maryland. And these laws basically forbid towns, municipalities, HOAs, or any other authorities from restricting homeowners' rights to garden their property. Many states, counties, and cities around this country are promoting replacing lawns with gardens for the benefit of the environment, for the benefit of the necessary insects that feed our songbirds. Our songbird populations are in extreme decline because of the decline in insects. And insects are in extreme decline for a number of reasons having to do with climate change, but also the loss of habitat. Habitat is not lawn, it's gardens. It's gardens that feature as many native plants as possible because insects, native insects can only thrive on native plants. Gardens are extremely important, and I find it outrageous and inexcusable that a place like Prospect would choose to attack and seek to destroy a garden that is attempting to address exactly these issues. I think there's some other people here that wish to address this topic, so I will yield the floor.
My name is Kate Greer. I do not live in Prospect, but I'm very familiar with Prospect. I am a master gardener and in the garden club that Jacqueline is in. And I have been to her garden many times. I think that you should appreciate this garden. She is doing exactly what environmentalists have been preaching for decades, to grow native plants, to provide food for butterflies, to encourage pollinators, and help the earth survive. Jacqueline's garden is just not one where she's thrown everything down and doesn't take care of it. She is in there working on it all the time. She's had expert advice from people who are running garden Edens in Louisville and Jefferson County and Oldham County, such as Tracy Mahan. Well, if you've read the paper, you've seen some of the comments that were in Joe Gerth's marvelous article. Another thing, one of the complaints was that she didn't cut back the vegetation at the end of the fall season. A real gardener doesn't do this because the caterpillars and the caterpillar eggs have to survive over the winter. I don't cut mine back until spring either. Actually, my neighbors don't care because really you don't see that many of your neighbors in the winter anyway. They wait until the weather gets good. So rather than condemn Jacqueline for her attempt to help save the world, I think you ought to commend her for her efforts. I will.
Hello, my name is Mary Ann Rademacher, and I'm also a member of Jacqueline's Garden Club, the Ramblers. And I read about what's going on in the paper, and I heard about different comments, and we discussed it. And I quite frankly am shocked. I thought, this is America. I'm not, excuse me, I wasn't born here, but I was very proud to come here as a child. And this total lack of tolerance on the part of her neighbors is just something that I found totally shocking. I've always been one to say, live and let live. And I mean, she has very good reasons for doing what she does. And I would just like to look for you all to think about being tolerant of people that think differently than you do. We don't all have to be the same. So please consider changing your attitude. Thank you.
My name is Rebecca Pendle, and I do live in Prospect. I live in Bridgepoint. I would hope that this whole situation would be a learning experience, because what these ladies have said is true. Prospect is a tree city. What Jacqueline has done is simply take it another step forward. I would hope that the sophistication of our council would take everything that has been said, which is positive. What that Jacqueline has done is positive, and take it very seriously into consideration. I do have a problem with $20,000 of taxpayer money being used to secure an attorney. I wasn't asked if I would like to contribute to this, but I did. I think everybody needs to step back. Think about what you're doing. I think there's been an overreaction here. And I think it's time for everybody to think twice about what you have done. Thank you.
Ma'am, excuse me, it's Becky, right?
Yes.
You said something about $20,000. What are you talking about?
Well, my understanding was that an attorney was going to be retained, and that was the retainer fee.
I don't know anything about 20,000. This is our city attorney and he doesn't either.
Well,
I think she's talking about Attorney Max Bridges of Wyatt, Tarrant and Combs, who has been retained as an outside attorney to represent Prospect in this case with a retainer of $20,000.
That is news to me.
And to me as well. Max has been retained, it's been retained on an hourly basis. So, I don't know where you got that figure.
I'm sorry, he's been retained on what basis?
Pardon?
He's been retained on what basis?
On an hourly basis.
An hourly basis for just,
I'm not sure, it's around 300, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. Okay, this matters in litigation, and we really should not talk about it from this side. We'll be glad to listen to what you all have to say. Thank you.
thank you.
I guess I should say this so that people in the audience may understand. This was a decision of the Code Enforcement Board, which is not the same people that are here. It's a board by statute that is, the members are appointed by the mayor with input.
By the council.
By the council, I'm sorry, by the council. And they're the ones that made this decision. It's not the council that you're addressing right now, but I'm sorry.
That's important for the council to know.
I understand. We want to hear everything you all have to say.
And this doesn't factor into the council budget.
Pardon?
This is not factored into the council budget that you've been discussing.
No, I don't think it does. Those are not paid positions.
Well, ultimately, it would be paid for by the city, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name's Melissa Amshaw. I'm not a resident of Prospect, but I am of Louisville. I'm also a member of the Garden Club of Kentucky and the Dogwood District Director that includes this area of the state. As Jacqueline has developed her garden, non-native and exotic plants have been replaced with natives, which support the environment through feeding our birds that are in decline, our bees that are in decline, and their larvae and caterpillars that create food for the birds, which helps our environment and makes everything living possible. Jacqueline is a master gardener. She's carefully cultivated the plants that she's included in her garden and has given numerous tours to garden clubs, master gardeners clubs, and I'm sure far more groups. But to walk through and to understand the native plants that are in her garden is impressive. It's the kind of thing that you talked about trends with your trees, with your Putney Pond and the various nature ways throughout Prospect. Trends across the country, as Jacqueline mentioned, are for native plants. native to your area, no matter what part of the country you're in. The city of Louisville recently got away with what is affectionately known as a weed ordinance. Well, to me, a weed is anything that's growing where we don't want it to be. Jacqueline doesn't have weeds. She has native plants. And they're doing the part that all of the green yards that stretch on for miles are not doing, and that's supporting our environment. Jacqueline has backing from the Audubon Society. We talked about the Beckham Bird Club coming to do counts and bird sightings. The World Wildlife Fund, what was the other? And more. She is a frequent commenter with the local Wild Ones Committee or group, and is someone that we look to for expert advice. And I think this is not a forward-looking decision that is being made by the council through the code enforcement agency. And I think it's time for Prospect to make a decision to get with the rest of the world and realize that we've got to protect it and get off Jacqueline's back. Thank you.
City council isn't involved in this in any way.
No.
Ma'am, the city council is not involved in this in any way. All of these people. No. No, it's independent. Does not answer to me or to the council.
The only thing that could be done in the future is if we had an ordinance that was consistent with what your desires are. But that would be an ordinance that would have to be considered by this council and then passed. But the Code Enforcement Board is a separate entity and set up by statute. And this city council really has no knowledge. They had nothing to do whatsoever with that decision. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes, no, the code enforcement. Report.
Monthly from the code enforcement?
What, do they give us a report?
Yes.
I suppose they can at the end of the year, but no, they don't report back to this city council. The Code Enforcement Board by statute makes the decision and then they enforce the decision. Right now, we've got this case, it's been appealed to district court, and we really can't comment on it further than that. I'm very sympathetic with you all. I met with Jacqueline's husband Saturday morning. We tried to see if we could come to some accommodation, and we just haven't been able to thus far. But we're sympathetic, but that's all I can say at this point.
That's the metro ordinance?
No, the metro ordinance does not take precedent over our ordinance since you live in Prospect.
I should mention that the Metro Louisville passed a new weed ordinance that encourages people to garden any part of their property that they want, with certain restrictions as to having borders of grass or low vegetation, having things cut down once a year. And that's a progressive ordinance. And it would be a good kind of a thing for Prospect to follow along.
Thank you for that. And again, I'm willing to sit down with, and just so other people know, the McGrail's attorney approved me talking to her husband Saturday, and I'm willing to sit down and talk to you all at any time, any place to try to resolve this. Okay?
I apologize. I can't see you, Jacqueline, or the other women who have spoken on your behalf. It does sound like that something you all have mentioned, and Mr. Gorman mentioned it as something for the future, is if, if there's a model ordinance out there from Louisville or another city, and that's something with some of the resources, that those could be grabbed, to bring up at future dates for the council to discuss, since we have no action with the code enforcement board, but obviously ordinances and whatnot we own, but that does sound like you all have hinted on that there are some other ordinances out there, different ways to word it. And there may be, some benefit to bringing some of those examples, and then the community could have the council would have a discussion, but the community could then have a discussion about that as well. Hopefully I'm not out of line by mentioning that, Chris, but you can feel free to air smack me from over there if I am, but it does sound like that may be something you could do.
Are there any other citizens that would like to address the council? We got two takers.
Bob Jacob, 7512 Chestnut Hill Drive in States of Hunting Creek. I've been a resident here for 26 years. And what I'm seeing going on in city council reminds me of the dysfunction that this council had about 4 years ago. And some of these ghosts are coming back up. And I think you all remember the debacle that was, and we all remember what happened. Greg, I got a question I want to direct to you. You said you had questions concerning the legality of the presentation a month ago. By my count, there's 4 attorneys sitting up here. Did you ask any one of those attorneys whether or not it was legal?
No,
Okay, why? You said that was a big concern.
I didn't ask any of them. I did ask another attorney. I did seek advice from KLC, and there are legal advice for things. So I did seek advice from them, and I was told that yes, that is the law.
What was their opinion? That it was illegal?
It's the law to present a budget message to the citizens, but there is no penalty for not adhering to that law.
Okay, so it wasn't illegal. What they were doing was not illegal. Your own opinion said it wasn't illegal.
Well,
I mean, that was the basis for why you said that you all walked out. And I was here. That was the most histrionic, sophomoric episode I've ever seen. And I've been coming to these meetings for 6 years. 2 men and a woman walking out of here like a sophomore in college. I mean, that was ridiculous. It was an embarrassment to the city of Prospect when that Mrs. Morris was here as a judge. And if she gets elected, she's going to have a real good impression of what our city council is like. So that comment. Number 2, in 1 month, have the 3 of you taken a look at the budget? Sarah, she's a professional. She's a family. She has a family, and she's interested in how her family around Easter too. But she got the job done. Why didn't the rest of you? And in the past month, all of the discussions you've had today, have you gone back and given feedback to city council about your objections to the budget and why you're objecting to it? I haven't seen any of that discussion.
Actually, we're not objecting to it. You heard us tonight. We need more specific information.
It's in the budget, is it not? In the proposal, excuse me, it's in the proposal. And
Have you
isn't that what the purpose
seen
of the
the
discussion
proposal
is?
yourself?
Isn't
you
that what
seen
you're
it?
supposed to have the discussion after the first reading? You weren't
No,
asking to vote
no,
on
you
it.
don't have to have a discussion after a first reading. And I think you have to have a discussion because I think the citizens have a right to know what we're spending their money on.
Respectfully, how do we have a discussion if you walk out? If you turn your back and walk out?
You pushed for the first reading. We could have had a discussion.
Look, that's what you do. You have to
No,
have a.
you do not have to have a first reading before you have a
You have to have a
discussion.
motion, a second, an action.
No,
You have to have a
you
motion.
can have
You have to
we have had,
May I finish? You have to have a motion and a second, then you have discussion. That was the opportunity to discuss.
you do not have to have a first reading before we explore the parameters of the
But
budget.
you wouldn't have a first reading. You wouldn't have a
In
first
years
reading until
past,
there was a vote
I've
for
been
it.
here for other meetings. In years past, has that ever happened?
But
That you had to have the discussion before the first reading?
Oh, very often, yes.
Very often,
Yes.
is it every time?
And also,
Every
we have
time?
had very detailed budget messages before too, which were available to all, in writing, to all of the people that were present and could read them.
And it wasn't in the budget proposal that you got?
No.
Sarah was able to get it done?
No, Sarah at home wrote emails. There was no exposure to the public of what she did. I applaud what she did.
Okay, pause,
Could have
pause,
been at the
pause,
meeting.
pause for a moment. If we're gonna throw around Sarah, then we should ask Sarah.
Good
So
point,
Sarah asked 18 questions via email. You're correct, because I can ask them, and then as an adult, I can come into the meeting and I can ask them, even though I have the answer. That's what I do most of the time. I'll ask the question to go, ooh, don't like that. Let me probe, and still bring it up at the meeting, because the public has a right to know. But I don't come in here and go, I don't know what's happening. I can't ask any questions. And then we do this. I come out with, okay, I really still have concerns. This was the answer and I'm not satisfied with it. And hey, everybody should know about this. We need to talk about it. Or hey, I'm super satisfied with this. This is the question I asked, and this is why. I'm okay that we're having the discussion. I'm not okay with attacking the way that I do my job and that I take it seriously and that I'm able to find answers and get questions and ask them publicly. We can leave my name out. I take this job exceptionally seriously. So if it's a compliment, sure, I'll take it. I'll take your critiques, but I won't do it if it's dishonest. I won't do it in where it was going, which was Sarah did that behind closed doors with an email. Sarah did email, which is how we're all allowed to do it. And then Sarah was going to come to the meeting and discuss it in an open forum. When we got to discussion, we literally never got to discussion. In fact, in the recorded tape to Frank, I am getting so heated. In the recorded thing to Frank, I even said, Frank, I have all these questions. You're right. These are the things that I did, but we haven't gotten to where we can discuss the budget yet. If we just randomly ask questions all around the agenda, it's not an orderly process. Now, maybe that's because I'm in the military, I'm fine with, we have order, but otherwise we'll be here for like 4 hours and we won't have discussed a single item. So it's in order. So I kept telling Frank, hey, I've got these things I want to ask. We haven't gotten there. And then all of a sudden everyone got up and left. And I'm sitting here like gobsmacked that it happened. I apologize, Mr. Jacobs, for having an outburst in the middle of your questions, and I will be quiet.
I'm finished.
I'm David Holmes. I'm on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, and I want to publicly thank Councilperson Odell for the work that she has done on the playground. You've seen in the parking lot the yellow construction material going out there. In the next couple of months, you're going to see an actual playground come out of the ground. Sarah Waddell did a yeoman's job on pulling that together on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Committee to bring before the council for the council to approve it. But for her leadership and hard work, it probably wouldn't be coming up now. It may be coming up later, but it probably wouldn't be coming up now. Sarah did an outstanding job on this, and I personally want to thank her because I have a special need granddaughter who lives in Prospect, and she will be able to play on a safe playground that is ADA approved and has a soft surface. So if she doesn't do one of the playground things and happens to fall on it, it won't hurt her. And it means a lot to me, Sarah. I want to thank you personally.
Thank you, David. Any other comments from citizens tonight? No, you can't talk then. Dale, I've already put you in the undecided column.
What's that?
I've already put you in the undecided column.
You read my mind.
I agree with one comment made earlier. We certainly seem to be dysfunctional in our meetings in the last couple of weeks, and perhaps with good reason. On April 19th, I wrote you, John, a letter with copies of the members of this council about the budget that was brought up at the meeting on April 18th. I use the term brought up because it should have been presented. It should have been presented with enough detail that I, as a citizen, could understand it. Yeah, you presented something tonight in more detail than you did on April 19th. I was here, I listened. It was much more detailed tonight. I had a number of questions, and I actually asked for the details going into that budget and was informed that I, as a citizen, couldn't do that. I was not eligible to see those details. John, I've gotten no reply from you concerning my questions. I did, however, get replies from two of the council members, which I most appreciated, and they were timely replies. However, it was from two of the people who contributed to the budget and participated in making the budget. And they helped you design what I believe is a fiscally irresponsible budget. Their responses merely criticized the three members who, in my opinion, righteously walked out of the meeting due to being excluded from the discussions in preparing the meeting and disagreeing with the procedure that was used to develop the budget and presented or not presented at the meeting. The response had pointed further at two of the council members who had inclusive member meetings in the past to develop a city budget. Again, I'm using the term inclusive rather than exclusionary as we have seen this budget be developed. Mr. Mayor, when can I expect answers to the questions I posed to you? Two of the members had the courtesy to respond to me. You haven't responded. This dysfunctionality, in my opinion, is from a void of leadership who has not taken the time to develop consensus on how we should approach this budget. It is dysfunctional, and I hope it changes. I've been up here criticizing you and other members of the council in the past, and I feel it's time for me maybe to try to sit in one of those seats. So I filled out the paperwork today to become a candidate for city council, and I hope, Sandra, when you become mayor, that you will develop a consensus approach to governing our city. I've lived here for now 44 years, and I think that we've made less progress in the last 2 years than I have seen in the history of the city. And I hope to see that change. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I do think it's important to repeat that Mr. Hulsman was invited. He was not excluded from the budget process.
What's that?
Mr. Hulsman was invited to participate in the budget process. He declined that invitation. He was,
Why weren't Frank and Sandra
well,
invited?
that wasn't my decision. I'm just telling you, you said 3 were excluded, and in fact, 1 was invited and he declined. So it's not accurate to say that 3 were excluded.
Okay.
I only declined because I've done the budget, God, 3 or 4 years in a row. And I wanted somebody else to really have the experience. Namely you, Doug, and Sarah, who've not been around as long to get that experience. That's why I declined. That's the only reason I wanted someone else. Matter of fact, when John invited me and I respectfully declined, I suggested that he call Sarah and Frank. So there's more to it than just that.
Well, my problem is not who developed the budget. It's the executive's responsibility to develop a budget with input from everyone. My problem is that the budget was given, I don't know, a week in advance, 5 days in advance, with no chance to discuss it with those who developed it and our executive. And that should have happened in order to put a halt to the dysfunctional discussions we're having up here today and had last week.
Well, let me just comment in reference to what you said. I served on the Jefferson County Fiscal Court representing 270,000 people that lived east of Bardstown Road for 6 years. When Harvey Sloan and Dave Armstrong were county judges, we as county commissioners got the budget when we got the budget. We got it the day that the public got it. And then we discussed it after that. So you say they only had 5 days. They had 5 days more than I had and most legislators had in the state of Kentucky.
Are you saying that's right?
You're indicating that you don't know how the process works, frankly.
And I hope to learn as a member of the
way the
council.
process works. It's up to the executive branch to present the budget, and then the council talks about it, and they make changes as they see appropriate. That's why you have a first reading. That's why you have a second reading. That's why you go through the whole process. And I'm sorry, I just couldn't restrain myself from figuring that out.
And the comment that there's only 5 days notice is really inaccurate. There was actually 35 days notice because it was 5 days notice before a first reading. And then questions can be entertained, emails can go back and forth. The mayor invited the 3 dissidents to meet with staff and to meet with him. They declined to do that. And so that the process was open. And if there had been a first reading, tonight we would have had a second reading, we would have had further discussion, and then action would have been taken. So there's plenty of notice, plenty of opportunity to be heard. There was just a decision not to participate. It's very simple. It's very simple. They chose to walk out. So they chose not to participate in the process. It's their call. They can do that. But then to blame us because they chose to walk out is absurd. Respectfully, it's absurd.
Well, respectfully, I think it was the right thing to do. And respectfully, Dave, I do not think that just because it's been done in the past is a righteous reason to do it in the future. This is a small town. This is a community that needs to progress. It needs to work together. And I'm saying that the leadership has created an atmosphere where you do not work together.
You missed my point. That's the process. That's the way the process works. You say they should have had 5 days. Why not give them 10 days? Why not give them 60 days?
Why not include them?
They get the budget when the executive gives them the budget.
Why not include them through the entire process? That's my point.
That would be a violation of open meetings, sir. That is
Actually, that isn't what's going on now.
that would be the
Metro
problem.
Council. There have been extensive hearings, there's extensive documentation. So what may have existed in the past throughout Kentucky, trending just like native plants, the trend is to have a much more informed process, a much more inclusive process, a process that lets citizens know what's going on.
And I was excluded from the details of that so that I could get my question answered before I had to write the letter to the mayor. The questions as of yet are unanswered. Thank you.
At the risk of appearing to cut things off, I would suggest that if there are no further citizen comments, a motion to adjourn might be in order, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We're adjourned.
Yes, sir. Good sign.
Oh, yeah.
We got all the, good space up there. Bit of my-